All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian, and this is Amy News and Conversation. I'm here today with two guests to talk to us about combination products, which is a trending kind of technology that we may or may not have heard about before. Since 2010, the number of Google searches for combination product has increased tenfold, which leads somebody like me to question, okay, so what is this thing that everybody's so interested in? We're seeing movement on the regulatory front. We're seeing movement in new devices and development. So I've brought here today two very special guests who are kind of experts in this and are going to be able to tell us a little bit more about that. Susan Needle, who teaches AAMI's combination product course, and Timothy Su, who is our new VP of Emerging Technologies. And I'd like to think that this is a very emerging technology. Why don't you both introduce yourselves, though, and tell us a little bit more about that area of expertise?
Sure. So I'm Susan Needle, and I worked in industry for roughly 35 years. Much of that was in medical devices and then moving over to the pharmaceutical industry and biopharma, and then combination products. And most of my career was at Johnson and Johnson. I retired a few years ago. I'm not good at retiring, so I'm still doing a lot. I'm now doing consulting, and as you mentioned, I specifically teach the combination products curriculum at AAMI. I also teach at University of Maryland, and enjoy doing a lot of workshops and consulting, and you name it. So
And for those
that's
who
pretty
are
much
watching
me.
right now, you've also written the book on combination products, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Before we dive into that, though, Timothy, you're a new face on the AAMI front. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'd love if you can tell me just very surface level, what is a combination product and why should I care?
But first and foremost, I want to say how grateful I am that I get to share a screen and time, and grateful that Susan didn't really succeed at retiring, because that means people like me that aren't really experts in this space get to work with and learn from these true experts that not only experienced it but helped to create the necessity of this field, and work with this technology, but also help to inform all the rest of us why this is significant. I am Timothy Su. Hello, everybody. I am the new VP for Industry and Emerging Technologies. Many of you will remember Joe in this position, and I'm very excited to continue his legacy in bringing a lot of these conversations and being a part of these conversations with you as we learn together why they're significant and why they're so critical for us to collaborate and be a part of. I think next you would ask me about what are combination products in general. One of the things that I learned in that time was how significant combination products have been over the past 15 years, because a lot of the stuff that we have in healthcare right now are combination products. It's this unique marriage between medical devices and the pharma life sciences world. Sometimes you have a device where you have a drug on board or a biologic. Part of it could be a delivery system. Part of it could be related to sensor technology that's in the device side with a drug. And basically, the way that I kind of understand it, it can be something as complex as these device sensor pairings. It could be something like a drug-eluting stent. This is a expansive field that is very innovative and requires a great deal of collaboration. And I've been at the table and seen and observed experts like Susan that have brought these worlds together and understand how both of these kinds of traditionally siloed spaces need to integrate, collaborate, and work with one another to make sure that the safety and efficacy of how these things come together is translated well for the patient. Apologize for the noviceness of my explanation. What do you think, Susan? How did I do?
I think you did very well. Maybe I'll clarify a little bit, but you nailed it. When I think of a combination product, one thing I'll say as a caveat, the interpretation of what's a combination product is different country to country to country. That's a problem right from the start. And we cover that when we do the training class. But generally, the US FDA defines combination products as you have medical products, so a drug with a device, a drug with a biologic, a biologic with a device, or it could be all three, a drug device biologic combination. Each those configurations where you've got more than one type of medical product together, working together to achieve its intended use, that's a combination product. And then those products are provided in a lot of different configurations. Sometimes it's something called a single entity, or in Europe, it's called single integral, where I've got the drug and the device, or the biologic and the device, whatever the medical product components are, where they are physically or chemically intertwined or mixed into one product. That's one type of combination product. Another configuration is where they are called constituent parts, those medical products that make up a combination product. So they could be provided in one package, but they're not necessarily already physically or chemically integrated. That's a co-packaged product. And the last version or configuration is something we call a cross-label. And in a cross-label combination product, the drug is intended to be used with a specific device, or that device is intended to be used with a specific drug, but they aren't necessarily distributed together. So you might even have different companies involved in the distribution of those different constituent parts, but they are intended to be used together in order to achieve the intended use of the product.
I can see then why people are Google searching this, because already you're saying you've got it, but it's complicated. And people sure turn to Google first to understand things, but ultimately at the end of the day, that's not gonna cut it. I can imagine a lot of innovators are going to start creating a cool product and not realize that this is going to be labeled a combination product, and then we have regulatory holdups, we have speed bumps. Is that common? Is that what you hear about a lot, Susan?
Yeah, it really depends on the market too. So if somebody is going to market in a foreign country, I'll pick on China. In China, a pre-filled syringe is considered a drug. That's it. It's a drug. Okay. In the United States, that's a combination product, which means that the regulations, the regulatory pathways, the things that you have to do in order to successfully bring that product to market and demonstrate its safety and efficacy and its conformance to expectations are different than it is going into the Chinese market. Another example could be a drug-eluting contact lens, which in the United States is considered a drug primary mode of action. I'm throwing in another term. It's a product where the drug is considered to have the main functionality that product provides. So it's a drug primary mode of action combination product. Well, it turns out that the interpretation of that is different. If I go to Canada or to Europe, it's a device primary mode of action combination product. It's like, oh my God, it's the same exact product. But so the message is that, yes, it's complicated. Yes, you really do need to be aware of the different interpretations for each product in market to market to market, depending on where you plan.
I can imagine that wound up saying, "Oh, I'm going to need to update the course once again." Is that right?
Yeah, so yes, it meant that I had to go update the course again. But that said, the guidances themselves were really trying to help industry in interpreting something that the FDA had already been communicating out. Historically, prior to those guidances issuing, the FDA had issued guidance specific to human factors, combination product human factors, in the form of a Q&A. And in that guidance, they talk about the need to create use-related risk analysis. And there's another guidance that they issued, I think in 2021, but my date might be wrong, that talks about the need for threshold analysis for combination products, which also includes doing some human factors work.
And when we talk about human factors, we're talking about how I hold my asthma inhaler, something like that,
yeah,
right?
it's the user interface with the product when you're preparing to preparing a dose, actually giving a dose, all the way through you're getting ready to dispose of the product once you've used it. So it's the full cycle of using a product. This primarily, and that's, you referred to that product being for drug and biologic led products. The use related risk analysis is something that you do for drug and biologic led combination products. Typically for people with device led combination products, you do something called a user FMEA, failure modes effects analysis. But anyways, without getting into all the tactical details of it, the guidance on the use-related risk analysis was just trying to help bring clarity to industry on what the FDA is expecting to see when you do conduct that sort of an assessment for risk management for your combination products use. And human factors is all about the user interface. The other thing that's also related to that actually is the essential drug delivery outputs. So when we do design controls, and anybody does design controls, you've got a design and development plan, and then you've got to translate your user needs into design inputs, and then translate your inputs into design outputs. And then you have to do verification of outputs versus inputs, right? There's a whole cascade that you go through. Well, one of those steps is historically has been referred to as essential performance requirements, that you're expected to identify what are the essential performance requirements for your combination product. But there was all sorts of confusion because some in industry interpreted that to be design inputs, and some in industry said, I don't know what they are. And some said, we think they're design outputs, but we're not sure. So the FDA came out with this guidance on EDDOs, short for essential drug delivery outputs, to bring clarity to industry and say, we, FDA, consider them to be design outputs. And specific to those design outputs, they are those outputs that are necessary for you to have appropriate controls around to make sure they are going to work so that your drug delivery function of your combination product is going to work the way it needs to. So a simple way to think about it is if I did a task analysis for what are the things I need to do to prepare my product for use, what are the things I need to do to complete the dose, and what are the things I need to dispose of that product. If you think about what are the parts of the product I'm interacting with in order to successfully achieve each of those activities, those are probably going to be essential drug delivery outputs associated with that product. And with that, you have to have design verification. You have to have design validation conducted for those specific characteristics of your product. So that EDDO guidance was intended to try to help industry understand how does that work? Because there was so much churn with people not understanding how to interpret it. There's still a little bit of churn. It was a draft guidance. I know the FDA is in the process of working to finalize it. But within the class, we try to actually work through some case studies with the attendees to help them really understand what is it that the FDA was intending, how can I interpret it? And then actually as the class is being offered moving forward, we're going to have some attendees from the FDA who will be adding some colorful commentary to the course as it's delivered to help people, really get at what are the things they don't understand. So I think that's going to be something that brings some big value to people.
Susan, that's really important to hear, because I think that collaborative nature, this whole combination products discussion from the beginning of OCP to where we are now has always been extremely collaborative. And so having that involvement and having that perspective, I think, is really, really integral and really critical. So truly excited to hear about that. I want to shift a little bit, just using from your perspective. What do you think about when we turn to look forward? What are some things that we're like, hey, I need to know these foundational elements because this stuff is coming around the corner, and we need to be prepared to be talking about fill in the blank. What might that blank look like to you?
Yeah, so there's two blanks, I'll say, adjacent to each other there. The first of those blanks is associated with really getting your arms around risk management. And when I say that, it's because the risk management is the underpinning to the entire life cycle when it comes to combination products. And the reality is the whole reason that they've become this new category that needs different expectations and has different, regulatory pathways and everything from an FDA perspective and other health authorities is because as you are bringing the different constituent parts together, those different medical products together for their combined use, what happens is you're raising new questions around risk, right? What new hazards might be, generated because I've brought these two constituent parts together? What new hazardous situations? What new risks or severities of harm because I'm bringing these different medical products together versus, well, I was using that drug on its own before, or I'm using that device on its own. By itself, it has its own set of risks. But now I've got to get really good at assessing, hey, wait, what happens when I bring them together? And that comes to the use-related risk analysis that we mentioned earlier, but it comes to other sorts of risk analysis as well. So your clinical risk analysis, your process risk analysis, really understanding holistically the risks for that product. The adjacent blank that I was filling in was your suppliers. Many combination product companies, I would say the large majority, like the 99% kind of, it's a huge proportion of combination product sponsors will have a comfort zone that they operate in. And it's usually the comfort zone that they started in. If I'm a drug company, my comfort zone is usually drug. If I'm a device company, my comfort zone is usually device. And many times what people do is they will outsource to a third party to get the constituent part or services to support the combination of those constituent parts for the combination product. Because of that, that means that third-party suppliers play a huge role. And your supplier quality agreements, your purchasing controls become absolutely critical. Making sure that they understand that they may be performing combination product manufacturing activities, and therefore they also have CGMP obligations associated with the combination product regulations under 21 CFR Part 4. That is a blind spot for a lot of these companies. And some companies may historically have considered themselves as strictly component suppliers, and now they're actually considered combination product suppliers. They don't understand it. You, as a sponsor for a combination product, are going to be accountable for the overall product's compliance. Therefore, if you are qualifying a supplier to help you with your preparing that product or doing aspects of that product, you have to make sure that you've really qualified them for the services that they're doing relative to what those expectations are. And I think it's a huge blind spot. It's also for the suppliers as well as the sponsors. But with the growing complexity of the different product types that we're dealing with, whether you're bringing in digital health and you're trying to deal with software as a medical device, and the complexity of that ever evolving technology. Well, wait, now I'm taking that and I'm integrating it with my drug and my medical device that I'm trying to deliver a product with. The idea of this course is to make it so that you're now your own consultant. You don't necessarily have to depend on somebody else to teach you what you need to know, because you're going to be equipped with the resources to be able to do what you need to do across that product life cycle, from the regulatory submissions, from classification and designation, primary mode of action, through bridging and human factors and risk management and reliability. It covers the gamut: post-market changes, post-market safety reporting, design transfer. I mean, process validation. I'm trying to think of anything I've forgotten, but it really does. It goes into depth about what's unique that you need to look at through the lens of a combination product versus, yeah, you've got expertise in how to do it for a drug, or you've got expertise in how to do it for a device, but what's unique now? And that's what the course drills into in quite some depth to make sure
Digging
that
for
you
those
walk away
blind
really
spots.
effective. Yeah.
I see. You're now your own consultant. I love that. And you know what? And to top it all off, even then, I become my own consultant. I still have questions. There's a book that I can reference as well. Is
Yeah,
that
that's
right?
true. Yeah, that's true. So we published the Combination Products Handbook, a practical guide. Bar Weiner, from at the time he was at the Office of Combination Products, actually helped peer review the entire book, and he wrote the introductory chapter to that book. And quick side note, I'm also coming out with a second edition. The same way the course evolves, I also make sure that the knowledge that that book imparts evolves. So we'll be updating that to help everybody out. And but it's a great resource.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll put a link in the description if anybody's interested in finding the course or the book or anything else related to combination products. We'll have several links in the description. But I wanted to thank you both, Timothy and Susan, for joining me today to kind of dig into what has changed in this very complex field that I think I'm still wrapping my head around to this day. But it sounds like I'm not alone in that regard. So thank you so much again, and we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.